Have you ever wondered if that one perfect person is just a coffee order away? But I promise you, it's as real as the caffeine that started it all. This is the story of how a simple coffee shop became the backdrop for one of the most heartwarming love stories you'll ever hear. It all begins with a guy named Daniel. Daniel was a creature of habit. Every single morning, at exactly 7:45 a.m., he'd walk into the Daily Grind, a cozy little coffee shop tucked away on a busy city street. He was a software developer, and his pre-work ritual was non-negotiable: one large black coffee, no sugar, no cream. He'd grab his drink, find his usual corner table by the window, and lose himself in code for an hour before heading to the office. The baristas knew him by name, they knew his order, and they knew his routine. It was predictable, comfortable, and safe. And then there was Clara. Clara was an artist, a freelance illustrator whose schedule was the complete opposite of Daniel's. She was chaos in the most beautiful way. Her visits to the Daily Grind were sporadic. Sometimes she'd burst in during the morning rush, paint smudges on her cheek, desperate for a latte to fuel a looming deadline. Other times, she'd wander in late in the afternoon, sketchbook in hand, ordering a chai tea and settling in for hours to draw the world passing by outside. For months, their paths never truly crossed. They were two ships passing in the caffeinated night. Daniel would be packing up his laptop just as Clara was finding a seat. With her vibrant scarves and the intense focus she had when she sketched, she was like a splash of color in his monochrome morning routine. He was intrigued, but he was also shy. What would he even say? "I like your scarf." It felt impossibly awkward. She called him Mer.7:5. The quiet, serious guy who always sat in the same spot, staring intently at his screen. There was a certain mystery to him. She'd sometimes catch a glimpse of the complex lines of code on his laptop. She even sketched him once, a quick, charcoal outline of a man lost in his thoughts, bathed in the morning light from the window. The universe, however, has a funny way of nudging people together. One rainy Tuesday morning, the city was in chaos. The subways were delayed, traffic was a nightmare, and the Daily Grind was packed to the gills. Every single seat was taken. Daniel got his coffee, but his usual spot was occupied. And then he saw the single empty chair at a small table for two. The other chair was occupied by none other than Clara, who was furiously sketching in her notepad. He hesitated. This was a major deviation from the plan. But the thought of standing and drinking his coffee was even less appealing. Taking a deep breath, he walked over. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a little shaky. "Would you mind if I sat here? Everywhere else is full." Clara looked up, her big, expressive eyes blinking in surprise. "Of course not, go ahead." The coffee shop gods have been cruel this morning. For a few minutes, they sat in silence, the only sounds being the hiss of the espresso machine and the frantic scratching of Clara's pencil. Daniel tried to focus on his work, but he was acutely aware of her presence just a few feet away. Finally, Clara broke the silence. "Oh, yeah," Daniel stammered. "Just debugging some code. It's probably not very interesting." "I don't know," she replied, tilting her head. "It looks like a secret language." "I'm Clara, by the way." "Daniel," he said, a small smile forming on his face. "And I assure you, it's a lot less exciting than it looks." That was it. That was the spark. They started talking. He asked about her drawings, and she eagerly showed him her sketchbook, filled with incredible portraits of strangers, whimsical animals, and city landscapes. He was captivated. She asked about his work, and to his own surprise, he found himself explaining the logic and creativity behind coding in a way he never had before. He made it sound like a form of digital art, and she was fascinated. An hour flew by in what felt like 5 minutes. When Daniel looked at the clock, he was already late for work. "Oh, well, I have to go," he said, a note of disappointment in his voice. "Hey," Clara said, tearing a page from her sketchbook. "This is you." She handed him the charcoal sketch she had done of him weeks ago, Mer.7:5. Daniel looked at the drawing stunned. It was him, but seen through her eyes, not just a guy with a laptop, but someone pensive, focused, and interesting. On the bottom corner, she had written her phone number. "Call me if you ever want to decode more of my secret language," she had scribbled next to it. He left the coffee shop that day with the biggest, goofiest grin on his face. He didn't just have his coffee, he had a piece of art and a phone number that felt like a winning lottery ticket. He called her that night. Their first date wasn't at a fancy restaurant or a movie theater. It was right back at the Daily Grind, but this time, it was in the evening, after they had closed. The owner, a friendly guy named Ben who had witnessed their little meeting, let them have the place to themselves for an hour. They sat at that same small table, surrounded by the comforting aroma of coffee beans, and talked for hours. They discovered they were opposites in so many ways. He was logic, she was emotion. He planned his days to the minute, she embraced spontaneity. But their differences complemented each other perfectly. He grounded her, and she inspired him to look up from his screen and see the beauty in the unplanned moments of life. Their love story blossomed within the walls of that coffee shop. It was where they had their first argument, a silly debate over whether espresso or drip coffee was superior. It was where they celebrated Daniel's promotion and Clara's first sold-out gallery show. Ben, the owner, became their biggest cheerleader, always reserving their table whenever he saw them coming. The other regulars started to recognize them as a pair, the artist and the coder, the couple that was born from a rainy day and a shared table. A year later, on the anniversary of the day they first met, Daniel brought Clara to the Daily Grind. It was another rainy Tuesday morning. He had coordinated with Ben, who had decorated their table with a small bouquet of flowers. Daniel was visibly nervous, his hands trembling as he held his coffee cup. Clara, thinking it was just a sweet anniversary gesture, smiled and sat down. But then, Daniel got down on one knee, right there in the middle of the bustling coffee shop. The entire place went silent. He pulled out a small box. "Clara," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "This is where my predictable world was turned upside down in the best way possible. This is where I met the most vibrant, talented, and incredible person I've ever known. You taught me that the best things in life aren't planned. They just happen, like a rainy day forcing you to share a table with a stranger. I don't want to spend another morning without you." He opened the box to reveal a beautiful, simple ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Clara's face as the entire coffee shop erupted in applause. "Of course," she said yes. The baristas handed out free celebratory espressos to everyone. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, shared with the community of strangers that had become the backdrop to their love. Their wedding photos, naturally, included a photo shoot at the Daily Grind. They stood behind the counter, wearing aprons over their wedding attire, pretending to serve each other lattes. Ben, the owner, was the guest of honor. Today, Daniel and Clara are happily married with 2 kids. They've moved to a house in the suburbs, but they still make a pilgrimage to the Daily Grind every year on that rainy Tuesday in October. They sit at their table, order their drinks, a black coffee for him, a chai tea for her, and they tell their kids the story of Mr. 745 and the girl with the sketchbook. And the story lives on. New baristas at the Daily Grind are told the legend of the love table by the window. Regulars point it out to newcomers. It's a reminder that you never know what's waiting for you. Your life can change in an instant. It proves that love isn't always about grand, sweeping gestures. Sometimes, it's as simple and as perfect as finding an empty chair next to the right person, all thanks to a cup of coffee. So next time you're in your favorite coffee shop, take a look around. Your love story might just be one "excuse me, is this seat taken?" away. Thanks so much for watching. If this story warmed your heart, please give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories that feel like fairy tales. See you in the next one.